righty, guys. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the weekly roundup. We have a great show for you today. We have Lieutenant Bill Walsh, and we are going to talk about a lot of good topics. My partner Jerry Kane is coming to you from Brooklyn. I'm coming to you from Strong Island. We're in phase 1. Yeah, we can go to Gemelli's in person.
Well, I'm still in lockdown here in Brooklyn. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning to everybody. I woke up this morning not feeling good. And of course, because of the coronavirus, I'm like an automatic paranoid, oh my God, I'm sick. And this is why it's good to be married to a nurse, because I'm like, honey, I don't feel good. And she's like, yeah, you got a shingles vaccine yesterday. Of course you don't feel good. So,
like, you thought it was the hangover.
Oh, God. No, I actually only had one drink last night at dinner. That was it.
And 7 after dinners?
No, then I had like a glass of iced tea. Went to bed early so that I'd be all set for our podcast, Michelle. I wanted to make sure I was a good podcast partner for you. So
That's all right. You always are, no matter what.
Thank you.
No matter what.
So
what's going on, Jerry?
I'd like to start, and we got a couple of things we could talk about that are really topical. Start with Minneapolis, Minnesota, and the death of Mr. George Floyd. Mr. Floyd was arrested for some type of fraud case. I don't know if it was a bad check or a bad credit card. The cops show up. He gets put in handcuffed. He's walked out of the, I think it was a restaurant. He's walked out of the restaurant, and then things obviously go sideways. We haven't seen all the video. I don't know if the cops there in Minneapolis have body-worn cameras or not. But at some point, Mr. Floyd is on the ground, face down, rear cuffed. And the officer's got his knee up on the back of his lower neck or upper back. You know, it's hard to tell from the angle. I'll give the guy a little benefit of the doubt, but he's got him down for quite a long time. And it definitely seemed at the point, you know, I'm no novice at this type of work, and that the suspect was under control. There were 4 officers there. None of them thought anything. I guess none of the other 3 either thought that anything was going wrong, or like in any type of group, this guy could have been the alpha male among the 4, right? And the guy kept saying, I can't breathe. I'm having trouble breathing. I think he says, I'm gonna die at one point.
Yeah,
and it wasn't hyperbolic. He actually died. So the mayor of the city fired all 4 cops immediately, which was probably a little quick on a draw, because you never know what killed the guy. An autopsy will be done, and for all we know, the guy you know, had a heart attack or something. Who the hell knows? Maybe he's got no compression injury on his neck whatsoever. That said, there's huge rioting going on in Minneapolis now. People are weighing in on both sides of the political spectrum, right and left. Most people seem to think that the cop crossed the line. I don't want to throw the guy under the bus yet, but it doesn't look good, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I wish, to tell you the truth, I was there as a sergeant. I was talking to our producer, Phil, before we came on the air. When I became a sergeant, I feel like I was half supervisor and half PBA delegate.
Oh, and yeah, of course. Yeah.
You got to keep your officers from. Of course, we have to protect the civilians. We have the guns. We have the bulletproof vest, the handcuffs, sticks, the whole thing. So you can't kill people that you take into custody. But you also need to protect your officers from getting fired, from being arrested, indicted. You need to protect your city from having riots. And it would have behooved a senior officer on the scene, or if there was a sergeant on the scene, it would have behooved the sergeant to step in. Now, again, I'm talking out of my ass a little bit on this because we don't have all the facts, but it doesn't look good. It really
no, it doesn't look.
To be honest, it doesn't look good.
And you know, when I was trained in the police academy, the big thing, and that was like I came on, I think it was in '89. You know, the big thing was you know, how to speak to people, how to learn about different, and that's the biggest problem. And I think a lot of times, and it doesn't matter who it is, you know, although it never looks good on the, you know, it never looks good on the cop. You know, you got to remember, everybody has cameras now. You have to speak to people like you're always on camera, because that's how you should speak to people. If you worked in a bank and you started wailing off on the guy because he wanted 5s, you know, you're going to get fired. Right, it doesn't matter if you have a gun or not, you know.
In a minute, you're going to get fired, right?
Right,
this- we,
it's
we all know
it's
the difference between obviously between a bank and a cop is it's a
no,
hands-on job.
exactly, and it's
Right?
not
Yeah.
it's not exactly. But I know, like as a cop myself, that's the last thing you want to do is have to cause. Because the first thing you
Right.
did after everything was call the sergeant or the lieutenant. You didn't want to have to call them, And if
Right.
you got there, and this guy, I mean, there's were guys that nobody was really beat up, but there were guys that they did have an injury, and the sergeant right away. Take your radios, give me your radios right over to IAB to seize them for DNA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey.
He used to work for IAB. When I was in narcotics, the sergeant used to work for.
So I have to tell you.
Let me just finish, Phil. Let me just finish. We
Right.
had an incident and the guy got hurt, and immediately, he said, "This is what we're going to do." And he got all our radios. He brought them to IAB. We had them brought to IAB. We called up. I had to drop off the so cool. I'll meet you downstairs. And I went downstairs and I'm like, "Oh, hi, boss." And I don't even know her name. She was so cool. And she's like, no, you don't want to come upstairs because there's people upstairs. It was the field office,
Okay.
And that was the best thing that guy ever did, that sergeant, because he knew the deal.
How?
And sure enough.
How was that a good thing?
Because he used to work for IAB. And then when I sat in the grand jury getting indicted for something.
Well, first of all, someone struck the defendant. Didn't someone say I struck the defendant?
Well, there was.
Or did everybody say I didn't put hands on him?
No, nobody said that. But the guy was struggling and the guy fought and the guy, went down to the ground. And right away, the crowd that gathered, "Oh, look they're hitting him with his radios."
Okay. All right. I didn't realize that you had a crowd making.
This is Bronx Narcotics. We always had a crowd.
I understand.
And we also had shit flying, So I mean, we had, that's what I'm saying. We were taught properly. We had no problem turning our stuff over. And that's what I'm saying. We used to have IAB call us up and they used to dump our phones. IAB dumped our phones, and the most people that call up IAB are cops ratting out other cops. And that's the truth.
I had an incident where I put a guy in a coma. He got my backup gun from me, and I hit him with my flashlight until he was unconscious. And it was a big McGill because the guy was like a freaking internationally renowned mathematician from like the Netherlands.
Jesus Christ, Jerry.
He went crazy. The guy absolutely went nuts. And
like Bernie Getz.
And we found him. He was standing in the middle of the street, just like marching in place. And he would make like a 90-degree right turn. And he would just march in place. So we cuff him to bring him to Bellevue. Everything's going great. And the sergeant decides that he should drive, and I'll sit in the back seat with the guy. And then the guy just dropped his right shoulder and kicked me in the side of the head as hard as he could.
Yeah. I had one of those guys. Yeah, I had a chick do that to me.
I get on top of him to try to control him, and I had my backup gun in the shoulder holster, and now I'm on top of him, so it's like hanging down. And even rear cuffed, he got his hands out like to like his side of his body, and just ripped the gun right out of my holster.
That's why the range told you never to wear a shoulder holster on patrol.
Yeah, well, I couldn't think of, look, I had a backup gun on me at least, so I went to get my main revolver, and I was going to shoot him right rear cuffed in the back seat of the car. I was going to shoot him right then and there, but my whole rig had shifted.
Oh yeah, those things.
So
were pain. Yeah.
I missed it. I put my hand down, and my gun wasn't there. So we get to Bellevue, and the sergeant runs in to go get help. I go because there's always cops in Bellevue.
Instead of helping you right away.
No, I told him. The sergeant was an old timer. He was like 6. He was about to age out of the job, the guy. And so I sit on the guy, and I'm sitting on like not on his neck. I'm sitting like on his butt.
This is not sounding good for you, Jerry.
And the guy starts kicking me in the small of my back.
Oh yeah.
Like, freaking hard.
He was probably a tiny guy too, right? Little wiry guy.
And I just decided I had to knock this guy out because he's going to break a vertebrae in my back. And I hit him like 5 times. I never knocked him out. I gave him like 2 skull fractures, blood everywhere. It was like a Freddy Krueger movie.
Yeah.
And he goes in, and this was saves me, in some way, because this guy had to testify, or at least give a statement to IUB. He goes in, they uncuff him, and he grabs a doctor by the nuts. They get his hand off the guy. The doctor's screaming. They get his hands off, and another doctor goes, "What's wrong with you?" And the guy goes, "Walk. Don't walk. Walk."
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it was crazy.
So they determined that he had actually called his travel agent in Netherlands about 2 hours before we came upon him and said, "New York is making me crazy." Mm-hmm. So I was definitely, nervous about getting indicted for attempted murder or anything like that. But I recently ran into the DA who investigated the case about 8 months ago at a cocktail party. And he's like, Jeff, he goes, we brought in the old-time sergeant who'd been on the job 40 years. The guy had 2 skull fractures. And he told us that the suspect hit his head on the roof of the door jam, get into the back of the car.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you already gave me your statement where you said you hit him like 9 times.
Yeah.
This and that. And he goes, so I did testify. I testified in front of the grand jury. And they actually indicted the guy for robbery of my gun. And that gave me some legal cover. And then the government of the Netherlands and the State Department got involved, and they let the guy go back to the Netherlands, and he promised never to come to America for like 20 years or something like that.
Well, so, maybe he's back now. He might be back. Probably coming up with a cure for the virus.
So if anybody had seen that, right? The guy's rear cuffed. I'm sitting on his back. I'm wailing away on him with a flashlight. It was horrible, horrible. Blood everywhere. I was covered in blood. But the guy was trying to kill me. And if he couldn't kill me, he was trying to break my back. And I wasn't going to let him break my back or kill me. And
right. Right. Well,
I'm telling you the story now. The hair on my arm is standing up, and this must have happened almost 30 years ago.
Right, and it's all now it's again, with all that said and done, with everything going around with anything, hepatitis, coronavirus, AIDS, you don't want to draw blood on anybody. Right, that's what I was taught in the academy. You don't have to. Every sergeant I ever had, every boss I ever had, said to me always, you're putting your hands on somebody, you better lock them up. And that's what happened. They got locked up. I'm not going to fight with somebody over something stupid. Obviously there was, and everybody they got locked up. That was the deal, and it was nice and easy. Nice deal. Yeah. You always had people that didn't cooperate. We had a guy that tried to kill himself in the prisoner van. He was trying to hang himself with the, and I said to the other guy, the other perp, I go, dude, I go, why didn't you say anything? Because we had these new prisoner vans where you can hear them talk in the back.
Oh yeah.
The dog catcher van, right?
Yeah.
And so you can hear them talk in the back, and so I would hear and I go back like, gee, this guy tried twice. He tried twice. And and then finally I said to the other perp in the back, I go, dude, why didn't you say anything? It's going to be a very long day for all of us if he kills himself. And he goes, that guy wants to kill himself. Let him kill himself. I'm like, no, that's not the answer. We want to go home tonight, But anyway, Jerry, I'm told that our guest is here. So why don't you introduce our guest? I'm going to take my sunglasses.
Sure. Let's introduce our guest, please. We have with us today Lieutenant Bill Walsh. Bill is a lieutenant with the Vorhees, New Jersey Police Department. But he's not here to talk about Vorhees or policing in New Jersey or being a lieutenant. By the way, Pam, we have a lot of lieutenants as guests. I'm feeling a little inferior about that, but we'll talk another time. Benvenuto, Riley, now Walsh, all lieutenants. In any event, Bill is a nationally respected lecturer on police officer wellness and on officer suicide. And these are two issues that are critically important in the police profession. In a typical year, more officers will die of suicide than will from gunfire from felons. And this is pretty sad. And it's something that every cop, every retired cop, every off-duty cop, every loved one of a cop, everybody who cares about the people that keep us safe, that all of us need to be educated on the subject and be willing to do what we can to prevent police suicide. So with no further ado, please welcome Lieutenant Bill Walsh.
Hey everybody, how you doing today?
How you doing, Lieutenant? What's going on?
Good,
how
good.
You feeling?
Feeling pretty good. Yeah. How about you? How about you guys?
We're good.
Good.
We're all good.
You're looking good, Bill. Did you get a renegade haircut there? What's going on?
My wife's been watching YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's good. You used the number 2.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
You
it's
stayed it right
pretty
up,
much our
and then
only
it goes
option at
right
this
up
point,
into
I
the
guess, you
number
know?
one. There you go.
I'm like still. I got a 1 and a 2 just before the shutdown, and now I'm in between bad and worse
Yeah.
as far as my hair goes. But
Yeah.
I'm like looking at it in the screen, it doesn't look too good, but we're doing the best we can. Bill, I hope you heard our introduction. How long are you on the job, Bill? How many years you been a cop?
I came on the job in '03.
Okay, very good. So 17 years now.
Yep.
You ever
Yes.
going to retire? What do you think? I'm retired 15 years. You ever think you're
Yeah,
going to
but
retire?
at some point I'll probably retire. It's not on the horizon right now, but
All right. I know you got a young. I know you got a young kid, so you got to save some money for college and stuff like that. How did you get involved with your focus on officer wellness and suicide prevention?
I guess around the time I was working on my college degrees, I went back as a police officer to try and finish my degrees out. When I first came on the job, I was in college. I was a dispatcher first, right out of high school, actually in high school. While I was dispatching, I was attending college classes. And once I came on the job with the field training program and the academy, it was a little bit too much to go to college and to work as a rookie cop trying to learn a job and try to go to school. So I started going to school a little bit later on. I was still a patrol officer, and I started going back to college, I guess, around '07 or so. Around '09, 2010 is when I started working towards my master's degree. And at that time, I had a friend who I worked with at my first department as a police officer who died by suicide. And then not too long after that, a close family friend who was also a police officer, a friend of my father who's on the job still, actually. He was probably retired about 2 weeks, and he died by suicide also, like 2 weeks after retirement. While I was going through college, I was getting to the point where I had to determine what my capstone was going to be for my master's project. And I didn't realize how big of a problem police suicides were. So I said, you know what, this is near and dear to me. Let me take a look at this. And I was pretty shocked. And I think at the time when I went for my master's, I think I graduated with my master's around 12. We were still at that point hiding the fact that this was a problem.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
still
no one
hide
was-
it to some degree. I actually take medicine for the same situations, and so I know it's very important, and there is still a stigma, no matter what, and that's the big thing. And it's hard to be a cop because you don't want to, that there's just that thing, like they're going to take my guns away and this and that. Now I don't, I'm retired, so it's all good. I go to therapy, whatever, but it's hard, it's difficult because there's that mistrust there,
Yeah,
and there shouldn't be.
we tend to over-identify with our symbols of authority, and police work. It's your badge and your
Yeah.
gun becomes your existence. And I feel like we do our cops our disservice by
Oh,
brainwashing that into them,
Yeah.
by trying to erase some of their own humanity, their individuality.
Mhm.
I get it. There's a purpose for it. We need them to follow orders and execute the orders without questioning them. I see the purpose in some of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they shouldn't lose their individual identity.
No, and
I
mental
hope
health is one of the most important things around, and especially now. And like it's I grew up during the era of like we don't talk about it, and then I remember like years later I told my mother, I said, listen, I'm seeing a psychiatrist and a therapist. And she goes, oh, why? And this woman was, in her 80s. And I said, well, I sometimes I wake up and I don't want to wake up. And she goes, oh, that's not good, but she was you'd be surprised. She was very open to that. And then we would, I go to pick up my stuff. I got to go pick up my crazy medicine, and even like with my little niece, like, oh, Shell's got to take a crazy medicine. I take it, I try to make it like, and I shouldn't probably use crazy, but it's talking about me, so I don't care. But it's that stigma.
Bill, is the phrase "the rubber gun squad" still used?
Yeah, it's still used. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I mean, it's. I honestly, and I'm proud of our profession, because when I did that research on police suicides, like I said, we weren't acknowledging the fact. We were burying our heads in the sand. I am proud of our profession because in a short period of time, we have come a long way.
Yeah.
I think with the whole rubber gun squads stuff, and with going to see the shrink and the mystery surrounding police psychologists, I feel like we're getting there. I feel like this is an incredibly large ship, and it's going to take a really long time to turn it around. But we are turning it around. It's probably not something I'll see in my time on the job. But if we all have that mentality of, well, why do it? Because we're not going to see it in our time on the job. Where are we going to take the job to?
Yeah, I don't understand that mentality.
So what is being done that's right? You mentioned that the profession is doing the right thing. What's being done is correct.
Yeah, so I think we finally come to the point where we can't hide it anymore. We all have acknowledged. I think there's probably a few police leaders out there who are still denying it, but I think by and large, you look at your organizations like the International Association of Chiefs of Police and Fraternal Order of Police and all those.
Yeah.
I know NYPD's got PAPA, all these great organizations that are coming out and putting the research out there saying, hey, this is a problem. This is a bigger issue than people may think it is. So we are, number one, you can't fix a problem until you acknowledge you have one. So I think that's the first step in the process. And I think the departments, the leaderships teams around the world really are acknowledging that. And I think academics are recognizing that too, and they're focusing research on that. So I think that's an important step because you can't fix something until you really understand it.
Right, if you understand the problem. Exactly.
So
now, what about like if any of those officers, is there any of those medicines that are banned? Like in NYPD, they get drug tested. And it's usually for coke or whatever, but something else always can pop up. Is any of that, like, what if you have to take medicine that, what if you're diagnosed as bipolar when you're on the job?
Yeah, I think that's something that's an individual agency decision. And
I'm just curious.
I hope that they're in consultation with a licensed mental health practitioner when they come up with those lists of medications and try to find some kind of alternative to certain things if they are not permitted. So I don't feel comfortable talking about the medication stuff because I'm not well versed.
I got you.
That's it. But there are some programs that are going well. I think there's a huge focus right now on peer support programs. There's our agency right now. We have a very unique program, and we're actually doing research on it because I have a great chief of the wardy, and he sees the value in doing research on things and trying to share what we're doing with other police departments, so that people aren't trying to reinvent the wheel. And if things come out and it's working out well, then great, replicate what we're doing. Or if things come out and we need to improve it, let's improve it. So we have a program now where every police officer in our force, from the chief all the way down to the brand new patrol officer, goes annually, and I use my words carefully here because words matter. They automatically see a licensed police psychologist.
That's good, yeah.
So there's a couple of reasons we're behind that program. One is we removed the shroud and the mystery behind the police psychologist or behind a psychologist in general, or any kind of mental health practitioner. The relationships cops have with mental health professionals is generally adversarial. You see them for their fitness, or they see them for their pre-employment psychological exam. They're trying to make sure that they get the job that they wanted for however long they wanted. I know for me, it was since I was a little kid. It was something scary to me because I'm like, this person literally has my dreams in their hands. They could crush them, and then you may not see a police psychologist again or any mental health worker again until you're involved in a critical incident. Or if you get sent for a fitness for duty exam, which obviously that's adversarial just by its very nature because you're in essence fighting for your job. So I think we're trying to destigmatize the fact that you can go and talk with somebody and they're not there to harm you. They're there to help you. And then the other piece of that is if, God forbid, one of our cops is involved in a critical incident, the first time they're meeting that person isn't after the incident.
Right.
There's a chance for a rapport developed prior to something happening.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's because the other thing too is like, and again, not everybody that becomes a cop has issues that develop on the job. Sometimes there are issues that you had, like in my case, it doesn't matter, but something pops up, and after a while you're told to stay, don't let anybody see this, and then the next thing no wonder I have a temper because you had to keep it in for so long. But it's really, really important that, people start to understand and work with people in these, especially now, like with everything that's going on, all these frontline workers, whether they're doctors or whatever, honestly, when I was a cop, I worked in a precinct in the Bronx in the 4-5, and I'll never forget this, right around Halloween, went to the house and the cop killed himself. He hung himself from the banister. I could never see those stupid, you see those Halloween decorations. And the reason why he did is because he was a mounted cop and he wasn't going to be a mounted cop anymore because he got hurt. And he saw so devastating. When I retired, I had gotten hurt on the job. My surgeon said to me, how do you like being a cop? I go, oh, it's okay. And he goes, well, what are you going to do when you're not a cop? I said, I don't know, I'll fold clothes at the Gap or something, or Macy's. And he goes, good, you're not going to be a cop anymore because this is your injury. So like this was years later, but like that's what needs to be in place to make it, like how would we approach somebody? How would you suggest approaching somebody who's struggling? I know how I would, but we needed to hear it from you.
Yeah. So number one, we have to be cognizant of their baselines. What's the norm? If I had an officer who I was friends with years and years ago, who was just saying things that weren't characteristic for him. And some of the things he was saying was worrying me. And you have to know the background. You know, are they dealing with something at home? You know, is there something going on in the job that's a challenge for them? And you have to be direct. You can't be afraid. You have to ask probing questions. It's one of the most difficult conversations you're going to have is talking to another cop about this. And we all have physical courage. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this job. But it's the moral courage. It's having the ability to confront that officer with your evidence, essentially, saying, Officer so-and-so or Joe or Frank or whatever, I've noticed these things. And that's not your norm. And I'm worried about you. I'm concerned about you. And there's been a few instances where I've confronted officers like that. And I flat out ask them, are you thinking about killing yourself? We can't be afraid to ask that question. It's not going to put the idea in their head. There's tons of research that supports that. You're opening up a dialogue there. And the other part of that is, as the person asking the questions, you have to be prepared for the answer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So if they say, yeah, I am, you can't look like, oh, crap. Let me Google this because I'm not really sure what to do at this point.
Right.
You have to have a general idea, and you have to have resources at hand. So whether it's a cop who's on a peer support team, I know Pop has got Ed Patterson's a great guy up in your area. I call him for advice sometimes when I'm struggling with something down here that I need assistance with, or I need to get a cop out of the area. And he has resources up there, and vice versa. When they need resources down this way, they can call me. So it's building that network. It's realizing what your limitations are. It's realizing who you can reach out to for support. And it might be even having that conversation with a cop where you just, I'm not going to leave you. I'm staying here.
Just honesty, just brutal honesty.
Hey, Bill,
I know
your couch or whatever.
I had another friend of mine, and I remember about this was a few years ago in March. She gave me a call. Hey, I heard you. I do stand-up comedy. Hey, I heard you doing comedy. I'll come down. Okay, and she passed away suddenly. And it wasn't until I actually did a show at the Borgata, cop I used to work with. I said, listen, what happened to so and so? And she goes, you don't know? And I said, no, she killed herself. I Googled, I went through obituaries. I was like, what happened? I thought maybe she, and it's a very sad story. She knew she wanted to do it. She left specific instructions for the dog. And it's really so sad. And part of me was like, man, if she would have just told me in March, I would have said, hey, I know that. Let's get you some help. I feel
That's another thing. We can't beat ourselves up. There are those cases in there where there are no warning signs.
And they're going to do it. If those people are intent on doing that, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Hey, Bill, there's a person behind the scenes on our little Zoom call here is a fellow by the name of Phil McCabe. He's one of our producers. Phil and I were cops back in Midtown South a million years ago. We had in that precinct in about a 5 or 6 year span, 13 suicides. It was wild. We would have.
There was one on Christmas Eve, right? The one on Christmas Eve also.
We had one on Christmas Eve. Yeah.
I remember that.
We did, in uniform.
Yes, I remember. In the restaurant.
It was actually Christmas morning.
In the back of a restaurant or something.
Yeah.
I remember that.
So what all of those, I think almost all of them, maybe one or two didn't. You mentioned you don't want to speak about medication, but all of those officers were self-medicating when they committed suicide. They were all intoxicated, almost to a man. And obviously guys don't want to come to the job and say, I got a problem because I'm going to have to go to the farm. Well, I don't know if you have the similar thing in Jersey. In the NYPD, they send you up to the alcoholic recovery place. We call it the farm. It's a 30-day trip. After you come back from the farm, they test you to see if you're a drinker. And if you're a drinker, you might get fired. So guys don't want to go to the farm. It's going to interrupt their career. I'll be quite frank. The NYPD has had the farm forever. And there are people who've risen to the level of 3-star chief who had gone to the farm earlier in their career and needed to get sober. So I don't know why guys are afraid going there, because it's not going to stop your career. And sometimes, in some ways, it enhances some guys'
career. It helps
career.
it. Yeah, you admit you have a problem.
They get sober, and then you realize that guy's a real good cop. And he just.
And you're admitting you have a problem.
But how regionally, nationally, is alcohol the biggest problem for police suicide, or is it? Anecdotally, for me, it was the number one problem by far.
I think alcohol definitely, and self-medication, whether it be alcohol or prescription medication at this point, I think at some point we're going to see that's more common because it's harder to detect. But I honestly don't think that that's the core of the problem. I think that alcohol is used as a negative coping mechanism to mask something else that's going on. So a lot of these organizations that are out there that send people to rehab facilities and things like that, I caution police leaders in doing research and seeing what the relapse rate is of it. You know, they show pictures of the Olympic pool and the beach and the palm
Yeah,
trees and
yeah.
everything like that. But are we truly treating the problem, or are we treating a symptom? So I think that's what police executives really need to look at here is before or even unions, because I know a lot of unions do that, before I invest this
Yeah.
into trying to make a cop better, or trying to make the person better is really what we should focus on, and trying to get them back to the level of health they should be at. Is the alcohol truly the problem? Or is it something else? Is it a trauma they went through on the job? Is it a trauma they went through at home?
Right.
Is it a trauma from their childhood? Is it something going on that maybe we didn't probe and ask about? Maybe they have a sick relative that they're taking care of who's
A lot of it.
who's
Yeah.
dying and coming to work.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have a divorce situation going on at home, or child custody battle. There could be 1,000 things, and then they're coming to work. Now they're taking on other people's problems, and it just overflows the system, and it becomes too much to process, and they turn to the easiest way to cope with and to deal with that, which is the bottle. All right, it's just easy to just escape into that. And I tell cops all the time, I'm part of a critical incident stress team where we go out and we talk with cops as a peer-to-peer thing after a critical incident. We're not going to tell you not to drink. Like if you have a couple beers and that's how you chill out on a Friday evening, we're not going to tell you to stop that. What we're going to tell you to do is if that changes and you're using that bottle to escape reality, or you're using that bottle to take you to a place where you don't have to remember things, and that's when we want to talk with you. And that's when we want to set you up with a mental health professional.
Right.
So I think it
That
is a problem, and a
mental,
lot of people
yeah.
have that.
Because, let me tell you, that mental health professional is a very important part, because I did go to a 12-step program for a very long time. And the reason why I stopped going to that 12-step program and I didn't start drinking again is simply because I've went to meetings all over the country. I've went to meetings in the city, and it's like sometimes people aren't solving their own problem. They're living in the problem, and they never moved forward. And that's why you do need a therapist. You have to go down and you have to really talk to somebody, because when you're sitting in a 12-step meeting, you're sitting amongst, it's not the hotbed of mental health, as they say, and and the other thing is, and I found for me, they were very, I haven't drank in like 20 years. I think I went for like 15 years, right? So that's not a bad record. You don't do this step, you're going to go back. No, you're not. You're not. You're not going to. And that's the thing. Let's all get together and find the real problem of what it is. And that person might not be able to drink, but
I think culturally speaking too, our profession has turned a corner, or at least I don't think we've come around the corner yet, but I think we started turning the wheel on it, where alcohol is in the central focus point of everything we do off duty.
You're exactly right. Because exactly, a lot of the cops that I know now that I'm friends with that go to the same CrossFit gym that I go to, that's what their thing is. Yeah, they have a few beers after. They have beer in that fridge for after major workouts. I would have drank that whole thing. These guys don't even have it. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right.
100%. 30 years ago, just a little over 30 years ago, I was with a police officer who was killed in the line of duty, and it was pretty rough. He got thrown off a roof. He was inaccessible to the rescue workers for about 35 minutes. They extricated him at about 45 minutes into the incident, and he went to cardiac arrest. It was pretty intense, and we were very intimate with the entire thing, to the point of giving CPR and taking a dying declaration, last rites, the whole thing. So we couldn't, back then, in 1989, 1990, you couldn't go to the job, the NYPD, and say, hey, this is like really messing with my head. There was absolutely none of that. And because they were going to take your guns and you're going to answer the phone at some loser squad someplace filled with other losers who don't have guns. It was going to be like a nightmare. And now, not everybody who's has a gun taken is struggling with alcoholism or being depressed. Some of them don't have a gun because they're suspected of killing their wife, or they've been beating their kids or something, and they have their guns taken. See, no one wanted to go to these places. I found this group back then, and they were great. It was called Concerns of Police Survivors. They're still around.
Yep.
And spoke to them, and about 6 or 7 of us went down for Police Week the following May. This was before the wall was built. It was still a big thing. Thousands and thousands of cops would show up, and before the Unity Ride was a thing. And we went down there. We spent like 3 days with these people doing like debriefing. Now it was like 8 months later, but it was worthwhile. And it was like secret from the NYPD, right? So nobody, if anybody said something that might trigger some kind of personnel action from the department never heard those words spoken because we did it on the sneaks. Now I think the department's a little better with that. I think they learned their lesson with 9/11. 9/11, they made all of us go and have a group session and a one-on-one session with a psychologist. I think they just wanted to, make sure that they touched base with everybody. And I guess it worked because I'll tell you that I thought we would have a rash of suicides in the years after 9/11. And we really didn't. We didn't have more than we normally have, which I don't, it's a horrible thing to say, but we didn't have more than that half a dozen to a dozen that we get a year. Last year was a tough year. I was wondering if you had an opinion, Bill. Why is the profession nationally having a good year, so to speak, with suicide? Is it because we're so occupied with COVID that we can't think bad thoughts? I mean, what is it? Because suicide has gone up in the general population, in the civilian population, but it's down in the police population. It's kind of, it's odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I could come up with a bunch of reasons why I think it could be, but who knows what the real reason is. Mm-hmm. Officers are, occupied now. They're busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. I know that there's really there's no outlet right now, positive or negative outlet, if you understand what I'm saying. For positive or negative coping skills, positive coping skills, the gyms are closed. Positive coping skill, churches are closed, houses of worship are closed. So that could be problematic, which, you think that would lend to a higher instances of police suicide for this year. Negative coping skills, you got bars are closed. Officers aren't really taking much leave either because they're not allowed to, or because they just, they're not. And then the other piece of that is they have to spend more time at home. Yeah. They might be homeschooling their kids. They might be balancing roles with their spouse who has to go to work. And now they're, I don't think that, I went to Catholic school my whole life, and the old saying about the devil's hand or idle hands are the devil's work. Yeah. Yeah. I think we're pretty occupied right now as a profession with this pandemic that we're dealing with, but also some of the things that cops would turn to that were negative ways of dealing with the stressors that they have on the job just aren't there right now. So I'm not really sure. It's definitely something that's going to be interesting to look back on and research later on as to why that is. I know cops are struggling to deal with how we're responding to this pandemic because it is a completely different way of policing, and there's so many things that are changing right now that are, I don't know, some of them may stay, and then you have the concerns of, you hear all the politicians talking about budgets and stuff like that. Obviously there's going to be concerns there with people losing their jobs or reduction in wages. So the stress may not be here right now, but it could be around the corner. So it's kind of too soon to call it on that one, I think. But the one thing you had mentioned about concerns of police survivors, I think that's a great organization. Right after those officers were assassinated in Lakewood, Washington, in the coffee shop. Do you remember that? The four officers?
Yes.
Yeah. I reached out to them and asked if I could start volunteering with them. There's two chapters in New Jersey. There's Survivors of the Triangle, which represents fallen state troopers, and then there's Garden State Concerns of Police Survivors, who represent every other police officer in the state of New Jersey. So I started doing volunteer work with them. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier is how important the family is in all this.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I did a speech at the ICP in 2017 on the families as a missing component of things. Why aren't we talking more with the families? And it was designed for the companion track. So at the ICP, you can bring a family member with you, and they can go listen to lectures just like you would. And there's a whole track geared towards companions for families and things like that. And that speech in 2017 was directed at the companion track to give them information about warning signs, about resources that are out there, about what they can do to get their cop help if they need it. And that's kind of morphed into a whole part of some other stuff that I've been working on. And in Vorhees now, we have a family seminar with our police psychologist where we bring in Panera Bread, we cater it, we have childcare on site, we have movies and activities for the kids. So you can the family can get done work, they can come to the police station. Our police psychologist gives a lecture, talks about warning signs, talks about resources available, how to contact her directly, so that now the spouse's support systems have the phone number for our police psych so they can call directly and not even involve us if that's an issue. So I think that's the critical point. We talk about early intervention, early warning systems. I always say all the time in my lectures, and I just started talking about the family as a component to early intervention systems with a friend of mine, Dr. Kelly, who's our police psychologist. at the ICP in Chicago last year, and we mentioned that it's sometimes it's easy for a police officer to come to work, do the right thing at roll call, go get in their squad car, handle their jobs, come back in, turn their gear in, and leave, and the sergeant not notice anything.
Oh yeah.
It's a little more difficult to hide that from your family at home, or from
We
whoever
had
your
a guy,
support
yeah.
system is
I
at
had a
home.
few. I worked with a few cops in the Bronx. That's exactly what happened. Okay, and well, okay, I'm done. And that's what they did. They killed themselves. And nothing. They were so unassuming.
Cops are really good at hiding things.
Yeah, they are. They're the best.
Yeah.
So what do you? I don't know how to. Jerry, what else?
No, Bill, how's your agency
Good,
doing with
excellent.
COVID? How are the officers doing down there? Have anybody gotten sick, or God forbid, how's your community doing? Like, how is it down there?
Well, luckily our officers are doing well. Unfortunately, we've had a few officers who have lost family members to COVID-19. So yeah, that's tragic, and it's difficult for us to deal with as an agency and as part of their support system. Our community, we've had per capita, we've had higher numbers than I think some of the other communities. We have a lot of long-term care facilities in our town. So that's really sad. So it's as I mentioned earlier, it's such a different style of policing. It's you used to worry about just making sure you had your vest on, making sure you had your gear. And then it became, all right, do I have my vest? Do I have my body camera?
Yeah.
And now it's, do I have my vest? Do I have my body camera? Do I have my N95 mask?
Yeah.
And it's something different. I think right now we're seeing a lull, but I think once this settles and once our adrenaline starts going down from this, I think we're going to see some issues if we don't get ahead of them. So I think it's important for police leaders to recognize the fact. I know, Jerry, when we talk on our other Zoom call, we have from time to time, it comes up that incidents like this bring back memories of other incidents.
Yeah.
We talk about how it reminds people of 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see that. And a lot of times with trauma and law enforcement, when you're going through something, you think about obviously what you're going through now once the dust settles, but then you start thinking of other things that remind you of this thing, your first, your worst, your most recent.
Yeah, all those triggers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I follow on Twitter the NYPD ceremonial unit. And in the NYPD, we're a huge agency. We bury every active member, civilian or uniform, with pallbearers carrying that casket on their shoulder, and we bury every retired sworn member. I think within 100 miles of New York City, we'll send pallbearers out to carry the casket on shoulders, which is no joke. And they were burying so many people that they made sure that they were getting counseling.
Yeah.
It was just relentless. Every day they'd go to a funeral, go to another funeral, go to another funeral, go home, sleep, do it again the next day. And there's no human connection at these funerals. Everybody's got to stay socially distant and masked, and they're very small. The families of these decedents are finding that the NYPD's participation is somewhat comforting. It's like the job hasn't forgotten. But you were asking six cops, to not just shoulder the burden of that coffin, but to really shoulder the burden of a lot of people's emotions to help them get through these terrible times. And I was glad I read a tweet that said that someone asked, are you guys getting looked after? And they said, yes, we are. And I think that that's a change. I think 30 years ago, they wouldn't have been. They would have been going to the parking lot because the bars are closed and splitting a couple of cold
Yeah.
And now they're talking and they're getting
they're doing the right thing. Yeah, they're getting their
thing.
emotions out. Yeah, because that's what would have happened. Everybody knows that. Oh, cop funeral, huh?
Yep.
I'm signing out from here.
You said it perfectly. You said 6 people, 6 cops. But you said people first. So I think the job is finally realizing, all right, they're people, and they're humans, and they have emotions just like everybody else. And I think society oftentimes tends to dehumanize us in a sense of the term, where we're supposed to just shoulder those things, not have any emotional reaction to it, and just deal with it. Right. And the saying, and you still hear some of these guys at the academy teaching where they're like, "Oh, leave your emotions at the door."
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Show me how to do that. Show me what book you learned that in, because that's not possible.
Yeah, usually those aren't the very successful instructors I've always found. You know what I mean? We had an instructor in the academy in 1980. I think it was like 1989, and the guy was telling you to just take a bite out of them. Dude, what the hell is wrong with you? What am I, Ozzy Osbourne? It's like a bat. Imagine if you listen to this psycho.
Uh,
I'm not
well,
going to say who he is that he used to drag weight underneath the.
I know exactly who it is. I married a nurse, which was the one good thing about that was, God forbid there was something gory I wanted to share at home. She'd seen something worse at her work, so it was no big deal. We got the high sign, Bill, to start wrapping it up. Bill, I want to thank you. This is an important topic, and I think we'll probably have you on again sometime. As the landscape changes, as we just discussed, right now we're in a good period for some unknown reason with the cops. It might be because of the work that you and your colleagues are doing. It might be because of COVID. It could be all kinds of reasons, right? I hope it stays that way. And we got to, and it's up to all of us. It's up to Michele. It's up to me. It's up to our family members. It's up to the retired and active cops. It's up to our family members and those that love us to all work together to hold the tide back. This is a really important topic. It may be the most important topic, actually, frankly. And we're really glad that you came on the show. Take care of yourself. Stay COVID-free. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. We tell all our guests to wash their hands. And it's good seeing you. It's good seeing you. You probably have one of the best Zoom backdrops, by the way, of anybody we've had on Zoom so far. Yeah, you've obviously been Zooming, so I give you an A+ for your backdrop. So folks out there, thanks for watching. I'm Sergeant Jerry and Detective Michele. Are you appearing any place this weekend with your comedy act?
No, I'm going to be in my living room. That's next Sunday. We're going to have the 7th. We're going to have a little Zoom show. Lieutenant, where can people contact you? What's the number, or how do they contact you? Just so we can put up on our website.
Yeah, sure. So they can contact me via Twitter at VPD Walsh77, or they can send me an email at walsh3477@gmail.com. And I'm pretty good about checking both of those on their pre-lot stuff. But then one thing I wanted to say before we signed off is have the difficult conversation. Mm-hmm. If your spidey senses are going off, you're all trained professionals. You know when something's wrong. You can sense it. Trust your instincts. Have that difficult conversation with the cop. Worst comes to worst, you're wrong, and they know they care about you.
Exactly. That's the worst that can happen is they know you care. Thanks so much, and we're going to look forward to talking to you soon. So have a great day, have a great week, and everybody can tune in next week for another edition of the weekly roundup.